All right, so good morning, everyone. So let's have a quick daily briefing for today and just a quick recap on yesterday's data. So, first things, we have the unemployment rate for Swiss franc for the month of May. So, previous data was 3.3%, and for the release time yesterday, it was 1:45 p.m. And for the month of May, the unemployment rate for Swiss franc was seen at 3.1%. So slightly lower than the forecasted, but overall it beats the market data last month. And next thing is the inflation rate for Swissy as well for the month of May for month-on-month basis. So previous data was 0.2% and forecasted at 0.3%. And release time yesterday, 2:30 p.m. And for the month-on-month basis, the inflation rate for Swiss franc for the month of May was still unchanged at 0.3%. So forecasted and actual, same thing at 0.3%. But overall, this data for the month-on-month basis was better comparing on the previous month of May during the year 2020. And prior to the release of this data in particular, so the market effect for Swissy during the Asian session yesterday, it was actually seen neutral. So after the release of the data, the market went up for like 10 to 15 pips, but after the Tokyo session was open, it went down for like 10 to 15 pips. So overall, there's a neutral reaction for the dollar against the Swissy. And economic data today. So earlier, there's a data for Japanese yen, GDP, year-on-year basis during the first quarter. So previous data was 11.7% and forecasted at negative 4.8%. And the release time earlier, 7:50 a.m. And for year-on-year basis, the GDP for Japanese yen was negative 3.9%. So slightly lower than the forecasted, but overall, it did not beat the previous data for their GDP on the year-on-year basis. Aside from year-on-year basis, there's also data for Japanese yen GDP as well, but for quarter-on-quarter basis. So previous data was 2.8% and forecasted at negative 1.2%. And during the first or quarter-on-quarter basis, the GDP for Japanese yen was negative 1%. So slightly lower than the forecasted, but overall it did not beat the previous data as well for the quarter-on-quarter basis. So overall, after the release of the GDP for quarter-on-quarter and year-on-year basis for the dollar or for the yen rather, um, during the Asian session in particular for the dollar yen during the 1 hour chart, there's actually a modest gains right here after the release, but overall the price still remain at the 109 level currently during the Asian session. But aside from the GDP, we actually have a handful of data coming up later on. So 5 p.m. we have the economic sentiment for Germany by month of June and Euro GDP quarter on quarter basis and year on year basis, and we have economic sentiment for the Eurozone for the month of June. All of them, they will release at 5 p.m. And later at 8:30 p.m. we also have data for the dollar. We have exports and imports and also trade balance for the month of April, and followed by the trade balance for Canadian dollar. And one of the key data for today is the JOLTS job openings for a dollar as well for the month of April later at 10 p.m. So if we're going to trade these currencies, especially the euro, dollar, CAD, we have to be cautious and put a proper risk management whenever if you're going to trade these pairs. So some notable instruments for today. First thing is the euro dollar. So during the Asian session, the current price of the euro dollar it was around the 1.2180 level. So there's a slight momentum on the upside last night for the euro dollar. It's because the Dow Jones went down for almost 20 pips, 30 pips during the before the close of the just session. But overall, we have to pay attention for the data for the euro and the dollar in particular. So if there's an upbeat data for the euro dollar overall, so you might see a more upside momentum for the euro dollar. So possible support is 1.2166 and 1.2143, and resistance 1.2223 and 1.2242 respectively. Next thing is the dollar Canadian. Current price was during the Asian session. It's currently 1.2084. But last night, actually, this pair was actually traded sideways. But overall, same thing with the euro dollar. So we have to pay attention for the data for the loonie and the dollar later on. So it may drive the direction of this pair. So possible support is 1.2052 and 1.2237, and for the resistance 1.2118 and 1.2133 respectively. Last thing is gold. During the Asian session, the current price was seen at 1900 per ounce, ranging from 1890 to 900 per ounce. So since the Dow Jones retreated from the downside yesterday, so one of the instruments that benefited from that is, of course, gold. So last night, this pair rather, went up to almost 1890 per ounce, coming from the 1880 territory. But overall, same thing with the dollar and loonie. We have to pay attention for the data of the dollar later. So it may guide the direction of the gold as well. So possible support is 1896 and 1893 and 1907.4 and 1912 per ounce, respectively. Again, one of our key data today is focusing on the Eurozone GDP for quarter and quarter and year on year basis later at 5 p.m. And we also have trade balance, export and imports for the dollar, and trade balance for Canadian dollar as well later at 8:30 p.m. And also followed by the JOLTS job openings for the dollar as well for the month of April. So again, if you are going to trade these currencies, please put a proper risk management and always be cautious, especially if you're going to trade later on before the release of this data. All right, so thank you everyone. That is all for our daily briefing today. Stay safe and have a great day.